Welcome, everybody, yet to another episode where today we are actually going to be speaking about money and whether it ruins your relationships. Now, you might have heard about this renowned lawyer. His name is James Sexton, and he's been speaking about the major causes of divorce and major causes of strain and what leads to breakdown in marriages. And I thought today I might just do a reaction on something that he had to share about just some of the factors and some of the things that he's seen in terms of marriage and relationships. And I wanted to just speak about how this particularly has an effect in today's episode on men and why men feel this pressure sometimes and seemingly a little bit more than women when it comes to a marriage or a relationship context. And so before I go ahead, I wanted to share this video with you in terms of what he had to share. It's pretty enlightening, but let's talk.
It's before pleasure.
It is the root more when people are succeeding financially or struggling financially? Let's start there. Does it have it's like 50-50?
Yeah, I would say it's both. It's really whatever. I mean, I've been practicing divorce law since like 2001. So I got to see a bunch of iterations of what's happened in the markets. So I started around the time of the financial crisis, the predatory lending and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Then I got to see sort of the dot-com bubble burst and then it rise back up again. So I've seen a lot of iterations of different economic climates. I got to see the COVID years happen. So I think a lot of what you learn is that during sort of average times, not a lot happens. But when there are financial stress and strain between people, there are two seemingly contradictory effects happening. Sometimes nothing unites like a common enemy. So if people are like, oh my God, we're going to lose the house. If they were kind of fighting before, it brings them closer together because they have something to worry. It's just like if a couple is having some issues and then one of their kids gets quite sick. They kind of get their shit together because they're like, all right, wait a minute, something we care a lot about or some common thing we have to fight against is more important than the things that divide us. So that happens. Or the strain of that thing creates discord between two people and it takes a system that was already had some cracks in it and it breaks it apart. It's the final sort of straw that breaks the camel's back. So that happens quite a bit when it comes to financial struggle, financial strain. A giant negative contingency that occurs is loss of employment. That's why when unemployment is up, you tend to see the divorce rate correlate with it. And I think this, by the way, is a harbinger of some very dangerous times ahead because AI is really coming to supplant a tremendous number of jobs. That's why we saw some of the volatility in recent weeks in the stock market was.
And so I wanted to leave that video there and really draw a couple of things from this particular video. And so right now you might be in a situation where you lost your job and it's putting a lot of strain in your relationships. You're having arguments with your wife. And even though you know you guys are not the enemy, it's pretty hard to not behave and think that way when you're in it. And he mentioned something which was pretty interesting is that it wasn't necessarily that the lack of money, although the lack of it is pretty more challenging in some cases than when there's an abundance of it. And later on, which I will also share again, when he speaks about just there being a surplus of money, how that can also be an issue in terms of marriage. And I think really what I wanted to speak to is that it's not necessarily the issue being money more than it is about the underlying issues concerning money and how it relates to relationship, how it relates to power, and how it just exposes cracks in already existing in the relationship. And so with that, he also mentioned about how we then probably need to start becoming more awake to what the state of marriages are going to be because AI is gearing up to displace quite a number of job opportunities. And so I've had this conversation before on my channel where I speak about how does this affect the provider role? What is this going to mean for a lot of men who are fathers, who are providers in their homes? And not just if you're a father, but what is this going to mean for you as a man where being able to provide, being able to work with your hands and create something and just make a living out of it is literally being wired and designed and engineered away, not just temporarily, but permanently. How is this going to affect marriages? How is this going to affect your relationship in future? Now, I wanted to just speak to those of you who are in a current situation and you're thinking, well, I'm currently in a financial situation right now, and I'm clearly seeing the effects of this in my marriage. I don't know what to do. I'm going to do this as a series in terms of just bite steps and little baby steps in terms of the first thing that you are of what you can do in order to not let your marriage fall apart in this kind of situation. And I think the very first thing that I want to say, especially if you are a man that's found yourself in this situation, and further down along, we're also going to be speaking about how this impacts, just women, especially in the marriage context as well. But for you as a man in this situation where you can very, very much feel the effects of this in your marriage, the first thing that I'd want you to really do is to appreciate the fact that this is not an indictment on you in terms of your inherent value as a man. The shame, the frustration, the anger you feel of not being able to just work with your hands or do something is not something that is wrong with you per se. It's just that life happens. Now, if you were irresponsible and you weren't good on your job and then it happens, well, then, you take responsibility and we can move on from there. But still, even in that, it doesn't feel good if if you're working, if you're in a position of providing for family and you're not able to do that again. And so I think the most important thing, especially if you're a father or especially if you're a husband, is to really, really take a step back. Take a step back, take a moment away, because how you react and how you feel and how you process all of this is really going to have and set the tone for the rest of your family. The second thing is I want to say is don't lose hope. And I know that's not what you want to hear, but you have to hear it, because the truth is all that you're going through right now is literally you just being a step ahead of somebody else that is going to come after you, that you're going to be able to use what your experience has been to get them out of a hole. But if you take a step back, you'll also realize that with this very unpleasant experience of not being in a position to provide also lies in great opportunity. Now, the truth is, I don't actually want to say that immediately go and find side hustles, although we will also speak about different things that you can do to find additional sources of income. But for today, you might not immediately find additional source of income. And then what are you going to do? The most important thing in this current situation is to be aggressive about protecting your mindset, your peace, and your attitude, especially if you have a family excuse me, that's depending on you to show up. But that number two, you're definitely not the only one that is going through this. I know a lot of people who are currently experiencing this even before AI. A lot of people who lost their opportunities and their jobs due to COVID. This is life. And I know that it can be very difficult and challenging for you to just feel like you want to keep moving forward, but take a step back. Just take a step back and appreciate that it's not an attack and it doesn't necessarily make you less of a man, especially if you're a man, you love your family, you want to provide. I know it can feel terrible, but the third thing that I also wanted to say is the pressure that you feel is not imagined, because it is something that was biologically wired and given to you since the beginning of creation. And so I know this might not be the feel-good video that you were hoping to expect, but I at least wanted to have this conversation to really start talking about how we can navigate through what we are about to experience with AI about to massively lay off a large number of jobs. And I just wonder, I'm really concerned, what is this going to do to the provider position? I wanted to just play a little bit more of the clip and then I would wrap it up. And I would like to also hear from you. What are your plans? Do you have genuine fears and concerns about just how you're going to be able to fend for your family moving forward in the event that you do lose your job? Has it affected your marriage in a way? And if you've also been able to just come out of it, what were some of the tips and tricks that you did in your situation to deal with this situation of financial strain in your marriage? Today, I just wanted to just really introduce it because we're going to speak a little bit further on about it tomorrow. But have a listen.
There was some toe dipping by some of the models like Anthropic into the legal sphere and some of the financial regulation sphere, where suddenly people went, okay, there could be entire industries getting wiped out by this. Like paralegals may become totally unnecessary. I've seen in my office already that, a good large language model can accomplish what 3 or 4 paralegals used to do. And it can do it in like 15 minutes, whereas it used to take a team of paralegals 4 or 5 days to go through deposition transcripts and find all the examples. Like there are certain things AI is not good at yet. There are certain things it's phenomenal at. And compiling large data sets, it's phenomenal at. So when we see an increase in job loss, like we will with everything that's happening with AI, that puts tremendous strain on marriages and very often leads to divorce and increases the divorce rate. One of the reasons why I'm always saying to people, if you really are against divorce and you want marriages to stay together, you'd actually fight for better financial conditions for people. You wouldn't have as much income inequality in the United States if you were fighting for there to be, people's ability to have a living wage. That would actually help drop the divorce rate significantly because of the negative impact that financial strain has on marriages.
So I wanted to end that there. And I think he really makes a very valid point, but I'm just going to add a quick twist to it where he says, if you really care about marriages, especially finances in marriages, then you'd be fighting aggressively for there to be like just an environment that's conducive and that doesn't put so much financial strain on people just in terms of their marriages. And this was then the other thing that I wanted to just really harp home this point is that if you are in this situation, and I know that perhaps you've had your dream home or you finally have your dream car, but you really need to ask yourself the very real question of what is really more important, holding on to things or being able to keep the things that we have or keep each other. And I would really encourage and implore that even in this very difficult times, fight for the connection. Celebrate the little wins that you could have. Be intimate. I mean, you're married, that's for free. I know it's not easy, when you're feeling the pressure, but at least those are the little things that you can do to actually keep the glue together, because you would be amazed how the marriage can actually survive literally by just that tiny act. And just also communicate. Communicating is such a big, big thing. And communicate is not just talking. It's not just saying how you feel, but really articulating to say, I'm concerned about this financial situation and how it's impacting our communication or how it's impacting our intimacy. Just being very upfront and blunt with your partner about just how the situation is affecting you and making you feel, and then giving them the space to also express the same is one thing you would think that people would do, but they don't do. But it's literally the most important thing you could do because it could save your marriage. And then finally, I wanted to just also harp on the fact that really fight against shame, because it'll creep itself in to the fact that perhaps you can't buy clothes for your kids or you can't buy groceries. But meanwhile, sometimes if you are not so ashamed, you'll be able to make certain changes just in your life to guard your peace. And just remember, your wife is not the enemy. You're not the enemy. The situation is, but if you're able to really communicate well, if you're able to take a step back and fight for your attitude and fight for your mindset, that's 90% of the battle won. Tomorrow, I want to speak about just what you can do or what the situation would be in a case where there is abundance of finances, right? It's not always the lack thereof. What do you do when you've overcome the situation? And what do you do when there is finances, but then the connection is lost? Because as you'll know, one of the reasons for challenges in marriages is lost connection. Thank you for joining me, and I hope that you found some of the stuff that I had to share very helpful. And I would like to hear from you. How are you coping with just your finances and marriage? And until next time, bye-bye.